A very warm welcome to you, my friend. It's been a while. I don't know if I still know how to do this, so go easy on me. The continuation with the Depeche Mode album review series. Now, if you've been following me from the beginning, you all know that this is kind of what this channel was known for, the Depeche Mode album review series. Now, that series has kind of grounded to a halt. There's a long story for that, personal issues and things I'm not going to get into right now. I'm pleased to tell you now that we are back on track, and we are now, if you've not been paying attention, we are currently up to The Mercy in You on Songs of Faith and Devotion. And today we carry on, and today we are going to be examining Judas, which is track 5. If you've been with me for a while and you've not subscribed yet, I'm going to do what every YouTuber does and be annoying and say, please do hit the subscribe button and engage with the comments, because it does help the algorithm a lot, and I would appreciate that. And as always, if you enjoy the content on this channel, you can join watchvg.com for a more in-depth version of this and all the other episodes, where you can see the videos presented in a way which is sort of more drawn out and in more depth, and the way I intended them to be without all the YouTube red tape. And with that out the way, let's jump into part 7 of the Songs of Faith and Devotion album review series. This is Judas. Judas is the 5th track on this momentous album, and I felt really old when I realized that this came out in 1993. It's been a while. But anyway, I'm also surprised that I don't have this on vinyl. I've only got this on CD. And I also have this, the live version, and I also found in my collection In Your Room, the single, and Walking in My Shoes. But we'll talk about that more on another video. Judas sits perfectly in the track listing in this album. I've always said Depeche Mode are masters of track listing, and just the way the songs flow from one to another are always brilliant. This track follows nicely from The Mercy in You, and it just precedes the epic In Your Room, which we'll talk about in the next episode. Now, talking to Depeche Mode fans about this album, everyone has mixed reviews. I always have said it's very fascinating about this catalogue is that we're all fans of this band, but some people obviously like more albums than others. A lot of fans say that this is one of their highlights. There are, of course, those of you who think that this was a step in the wrong direction due to the sort of rock approach. However, I think in Depeche Mode and Allergy, this was a brilliant, brilliant album. But of course, we spoke more about that in the previous episodes where we spoke about the sound. But now focusing on Judas. Judas, not to be confused with Lady Gaga's Judas. This is a down-tempo track. Checking the BPM, it's at 126. Now, I just want to read you a resource from DM Live Wiki. The guys there at DM Live Wiki do great work, with all the resources available here. Now, if you're familiar with the production of this album, and certainly if you've seen the interviews with Flood, Mark Ellis, the producer, you will remember that this was the album that nearly gave him a nervous breakdown. It was so difficult to do, and I think he said it's probably one of the hardest and most difficult records he's ever made. However, probably one of the greatest as well. He is indeed a great producer. There was the story of Martin and Alan arguing while the song was being mixed, and I just want to reference this on DM Wiki Live. And it first goes on to ask what is the song Judas all about. And Martin tells an Australian newspaper that Judas is an arrogant love song. We are not condoning unsafe sex. Of course not, Martin, you kinky bastard. We are not condoning unsafe sex. It is about wanting 100% of someone in a relationship, the ultimate arrogance. Once again, Martin going where no man has gone before, being very, very kinky and dark, and, examining the darker sides of the human psyche. This is interesting as well. It says Alan Wilder was asked by a fan on his site if it is true that the recording of Judas resulted in a huge fight between him and Martin. Alan's response was, "Huge fight, no. But it's true to say that Martin and I really didn't see eye to eye on that one. We actually recorded the track 3 or 4 different ways. The reggae-ish version being the second incarnation, I think. There was also the original demo style as well as a sort of blues country version. The final version was completed very late in the day, and Martin didn't say much, and that is his way of saying he doesn't like something. That is quite well documented in the Depeche Mode story, was the tension between Martin and Alan, and Martin not being a confrontational person. He often got Fletch to kind of, I won't say fight his battles for him, but I think this caused Martin a lot of problems and turmoil. It is interesting just reading this how Alan said they recorded the song in 3 or 4 different ways. Now, I will address this on watchvg.com. I've got a series there which is called From Demo to Completion, so you guys there will know I take a song and we listen to the demo and then we listen to the finished product and we examine how the journey goes from demo to completion. And of course, I cannot show content like that here on YouTube due to the copyright laws and stuff and algorithms, blah, blah, blah. But it is available on watchvg.com. It is a well-known fact that during the production, they would try many, many different approaches. It was round about the sort of Violator period that Alan had asked Martin to present demos that were less sort of complete or more minimalist, so that, preceding that, Martin would, if you listen to the demos, they were pretty much fleshed out, although they were sonically not up to standard of the finished record. Roundabout Violator, following Alan's wishes, Martin had presented the demos in a more sort of simplistic way so that this could leave sort of more room for interpretation, if that makes sense. But of course, when they took the demos, it was never, approach it in a certain way. Enjoy the Silence was a classic example of how, just something with a harmonium and a voice became sort of like an up-tempo dance track if we listen to the final version of Enjoy the Silence. So there was a lot of experimentation. So whenever the demo was presented, they would not necessarily go to the first idea. They would very often do several different approaches, because that was what Depeche Mode was all about, was pushing the frontiers, presenting things in a way that you've never heard them before, and obviously keeping it interesting for themselves. And of course, if you read the stories of the studio work, there were times where they'd start off and then they'd do several different versions and then come back to the original one. My point being, there was a lot of experimentation involved here, and it was never ever straightforward. Now, coming back to the demos, I just want to quote Martin on this, also from Wiki Live. Martin said, "We try all sorts of ways of presenting a song. Each attempt puts the song in a different light. You can't even imagine that the versions there are of some songs. For example, there is a reggae version and a blues version of Judas." Now, as you say that, a blues version, but I really can't imagine a reggae version. Imagine that. Martin goes on to say, "It's terrible, but we have to go through this stage to realize that all versions, except the one that is ultimately valid, are terrible. That's the only way we can get on the right track." So there you have it. Martin really saying that the way they find the ultimate approach for each song is really through a process of elimination, by doing a blues version, doing a jazz version, a reggae version, and then just going, okay, those are all terrible. We now know we've tried everything. And I think if you're an artist or a musician or a producer and you've released music, when as artists we're never happy, we're never 100% happy. So I think with Depeche Mode, in working this way, in doing so, they kind of exhaust all the possibilities and eliminate all doubt in their minds, so that by the time the song is released, they know that that is the ultimate and the best version they could have done. I'm still having a hard time trying to imagine Judas done in reggae. Right. Before we get carried away, let's now get over to the keyboard room and we're going to examine this song, the chords, the structure, and all the parts. Right, let's examine the chord structure. Now, straightforward, but what Martin does is he throws in these odd sort of like chromatic notes every now and then, which you will see, which turns something which is seemingly straightforward into something quite dark and edgy, as only Martin can do. Now, the key that is played on the record, and indeed in the devotional show, it starts here on the C sharp.
Is simplicity best?
And then it goes to the G sharp.
Or simply the easiest?
And indeed, that is the key I will be demonstrating this song in. I will be releasing a tutorial on this song on my watchvg.com channel, but in that tutorial I will transpose it into C.
Is simplicity best, or simply the easiest?
The reason I will do that for the tutorial is it's just because it is easier to play in a C key, as up to, for beginner pianists, playing on the black notes can be quite challenging, and I am all about teaching people to play from scratch. But for this video we are going to concentrate on the album version, and it's worth noting that Martin and Peter Gordino did an acoustic version a few years ago where they did play it in the C key, which was...
Is simplicity best, or simply the easiest?
Anyway, we're going to stick to the original key, which is the album recording. Starting here on the C sharp.
Is simplicity best, or simply the easiest? The narrowest path is always the holiest. So walk on barefoot for me, suffer some misery. If you want my love, if you want my love. Man will survive.
Now, let's just examine what I did there. Straightforward.
Is simplicity best,
I love that line.
or simply the easiest?
Just that lyric, is simplicity best, or simply the easiest, along with that easy, melodic structure.
The narrowest path is always the holiest.
Yeah, we get a variation.
So walk on barefoot for me,
Watch this.
suffer some misery. If you want my love, if you want my love.
And then... So what's interesting there is just the way those chromatic notes move, sort of in the bass part, just giving it that sort of... It almost feels like the ground is moving beneath you. So it's, if he didn't put in those chromatic notes, it would have a lot different feel. Watch.
So walk on barefoot for me, suffer some misery.
If you went down to like a traditional way would be just to get down to that,
Suffer some misery. If you want my love.
that is a real sort of traditional way of doing it. But watch what Martin does. And it is really just the way those notes move chromatically. It almost feels like as if though the ground is moving beneath you. And then of course the second verse, same structure.
Man will survive the harshest conditions and stay alive through difficult decisions. So make up your mind for me, walk the line for me. If you want my love, if you want my love.
And then, to me, the sort of bridge, which is almost like a highlight of the song.
Idle talk and hollow promises, cheating Judases, doubting Thomases. Don't just stand there and shout it, do something about it.
And we just straight back into the original structure. And then the third verse.
You can't fulfill your wildest ambitions, and I'm sure you will lose your inhibitions. So open yourself to me, risk your health for me. If you want my love, if you want my love, if you want my love.
And it's just really that simple outro.
If you want my love, if you want my love, if you want my love.
That sort of is the basis. Then, of course, you've got all those strings and stuff and everything. This song is beautiful. It was done with bagpipes and everything, and it has a lot of sort of like discordance, sort of like sounds in the background. Almost like distant sounds, like that are quite distant in the background. It almost sounds like you're listening to a band playing, but then there's like ambient sounds in the background, like a radio that's playing that's slightly out of tune and all kinds of things like that. So check out the interview I did with Steve Lyon, how he talks about some of the techniques they used in the production of this album. And he said it's certainly one of the most creative albums he's ever worked on. So that, of course, is the whole song, very, very straightforward in structure, but of course the production is very, very complex and very, very dark. And I just love the outro of this, the way it sort of blends into In Your Room. It's got that boom, 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 boom. And my goal in showing you the chords is just to sort of show you the seams, because obviously when you're listening to this, the way it's put together, it's kind of seamless. And what I mean by that is, it doesn't sort of it doesn't sort of move that. It sort of like drifts into the chord. So in my demonstration, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to show you where the seams are, if that makes any sense. And let's just listen to it melodically, shall we?